Hey everyone. So we're going to take a look at the big ideas for lesson 1.1. That's our focus for this particular video. So the first big idea that we have is this, that categorical data is reported as frequencies or relative frequencies. So categorical data is data that is not numerical. And categorical data is either given as a frequency or relative frequency, and we need to know that relative frequency is a percent. The second big idea is that categorical data can be displayed in pie charts, bar graphs, whether it's a side-by-side bar graph or a segmented bar graph, and can also be displayed as a mosaic chart or a mosaic plot. So that's a little bit of information about categorical data. Now let's take a look at another big idea, and that is contingency tables or two-way tables. Contingency tables or two-way tables have the same name. They're both the same thing. So here we go. I'll highlight this a little bit. A two-way table and a contingency table are the same thing. And here's an example of one down here. You've got two variables, you're comparing them, and you have your numbers in the table like this. You can also have your subtotals on the side and your subtotals here. And these letters A, B, and C just represent particular numbers. Now, if we were to find something that were to give us A divided by B, that would be called a conditional relative frequency. So I'm looking down here at this one. I kind of am going out of order, but I think it still works. So anytime we say, well, what is the probability of A out of B? That's called conditional relative frequency. If you were asked to find something that gives you B out of C, the grand total, that would be called marginal relative frequency. So B out of C, anything that's a subtotal out of the grand total is marginal relative frequency. And if you think about it, that should make sense because this right here is the margin, okay? This subtotal right here is the margin, so that's called marginal relative frequency. And then finally, if we have something that is the combination of both variables out of the grand total, that is called joint relative frequency. So the combination of both variables out of the grand total is joint relative frequency. So that's a little bit of information about two-way tables, and that's the big idea that we have for two-way tables or contingency tables. All right, let's move on to our last section for this particular lesson, and that is this. It talks about an association or independence. That's going to be our focus for this section. So an association between two variables is when it appears that one variable affects the other. So if one variable has an effect on the other variable and would change things, we say that the two variables have an association. Now let's expand on that just a little bit more and say that, oh, I got a little bit too much there. Let's move that down. If there does not appear to be an association between the two variables, we can say that the variables appear to be independent. So the big idea there is that if two variables are independent of each other, they do not have an association. If there is an association, we say they are not independent of each other. So now let's take a look at the last thing, and that is if the bars of a segmented bar graph or a side-by-side bar graph look identical or nearly the same, then the variables are independent of each other. So that was one of the other big ideas that we learned in this particular lesson. If we see that the bars look identical or are nearly the same, I mean really, really close to being the same, then we would say, it doesn't look like one variable has an effect on the other variable. And so therefore, the two variables are independent of each other. So we've got three segments of our big ideas. This first one is talking about categorical data and what is categorical data all about? How do we use it and organize it? Down here, we're talking about two-way tables and contingency tables. And then finally, in this red section right here, we are talking about independence or an association between two variables. That's all we got for our big ideas for lesson 1.1. I hope you have a great day.